Cannabis is a much safer alternative to the substances that have taken the lives of my loved ones and likely many of yours.
This new proposed change, which is in the form of a Senate bill, on the first line of it, it basically says that it would take back everything.
First thing we maybe all need to understand that the whole purpose of creating legalization or ending prohibition around cannabis is to end the criminalization of those people that are involved in it.
You know, continue to have adult use, but a little bit more reasonable usage.
When we legalized marijuana, there were a whole group of societal problems that were created by that.
Alice Johnson, where's Alice? Boy, are you incredible. And we're going to be listening to your recommendation on pardons. You're going to go over and she's going to be my pardon czar, okay?
In today's show, the New Hampshire House passes a Republican-led bill to legalize herb. Ohio weed costs twice the amount as Michigan's, but lawmakers in Ohio want to make it even more expensive as they propose to repeal most of the current homegrown laws. Also, President Trump confirms he's appointing former drug prisoner that he freed as a new pardon czar and why this could be good for the legacy market. And more than $6 million in marijuana tax revenue has been sitting in a bank account in New Jersey doing absolutely nothing. We're going to get into all those stories and more today, but first, let's look at the New Hampshire House, which passes a Republican-led bill to legalize herb.
The New Hampshire House is not giving up on legalizing marijuana. State reps passed a bill this afternoon that would remove most references to cannabis in statute, but would approve possession and use of marijuana for those over the age of 21.
That cannabis is a much safer alternative to the substances that have taken the lives of my loved ones and likely many of yours.
The bill is now headed to the state Senate, where there is more opposition on the issue. Governor Kelly Ayotte has also said she will not allow legalization on her watch.
So as you guys can see, despite that bill being passed, it's still an uphill battle. Now let's dig into this article a little bit more, which actually breaks down that the House of Representatives narrowly approved a Republican-led bill that would legalize personal use and possession among adults older than 21. But sales will still remain illegal. Now this is a big step because decriminalization is literally the first step in a lot of countries when they get into some sort of program. And according to this, on a voice note Thursday, House members passed HB 75, which would remove state penalties around the use and possession, but not establish a licensed commercial market or a broader regulatory scheme. So from that, you guys can see at least they're taking the first step, which is decriminalization. And back where I was living in the Caribbean, decriminalization was also the first step. You gotta decriminalize it, you gotta remove some of the penalties, and oftentimes you'll see later on a medical program or a rec program may follow. Now this article goes on to say that the measure represents the overwhelming majority of the staters who implore that this body ends the criminalization of cannabis to end the fear of unnecessary disruption to people's lives in the event that they find cannabis to be their nighttime sleep aid, their mood enhancer, or their morning pick-me-up. And this statement in itself recognizes the tons of benefits that come with the good herb. Now what we've seen is that in a lot of situations, a lot of lawmakers actually oppose the herb and they cite things like harder drugs and alcohol. And personally, I think that's a really unfair comparison simply because of the amount of medical benefits that people can get from the good herb. And this member of the House of Representatives actually said that, as it says, Newell noted that her husband died of a heroin overdose while alcohol killed her brother. But somehow we still maintain that our citizens cannot be trusted to consume cannabis responsibly, even though we know it's virtually impossible to consume a lethal amount. Even as we know it's a much safer alternative to the substances that have taken the lives of my loved ones and likely many of yours. Now I think that's a massive step. I think that's a step in the right direction. And like I said, a lot of times just recognizing the benefits and decriminalizing is a good thing. Now what's not a good thing is what's happening down in Ohio, where recently the voters voted to legalize the herb and pass rec. And what we're seeing right now is lawmakers trying to rope that in, cut down home grows and increase taxes. And currently the Ohio Senate is proposing a bill that will repeal a lot of those laws.
Will Ohio's marijuana laws lead to massive changes? That's what some lawmakers are hoping for.
Hey Chris, so remember a couple of years ago when we went to the polls and 60% of Ohioans said they wanted marijuana legalization?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and do you remember this, everything specific around it they said yes to?
Yes.
Well, some lawmakers believe that's not right, even though according to the law, if it is agreed to at an election, it goes through. Now, this new proposed change, which is in the form of a Senate bill, on the first line of it, it basically says that it would take back everything or repeal most of the law. Again, the law that you voted on a couple of Novembers ago and that 60% said should take place. So what exactly are those changes that they are looking to have done here? Well, they're looking to combine licenses. A couple of these things are a little arbitrary there. So basically, for anyone that's trying to sell marijuana, currently you could get either a medical marijuana license or you could get a recreational marijuana license. The recreational one, far easier to get because there's less restrictions other than related to medical. They're trying to loop those in together. So what exactly that means is trying to ensure that they would be able to have one process, but that could mean that it's a lot more difficult for one or the other to actually get. It would expand penalties related to marijuana convictions in certain parts, would change the THC limit, and then this is the biggie here. The tax percentage right now is 10%. That is one of the highest ones that you would see across the country, and in fact makes the state of Ohio far less competitive than the state of like Michigan, let's say. The planned proposal is to increase that tax from 10% to 15%, and in addition to that, all of the revenue would go to the state. Now, right now, how that 10% is broken up is many different pies, and some of those pies have some of the tax revenue go toward a local thing or a local organization. That wouldn't take place if this were to pass. Proponents of the bill believe this is necessary to ensure the viability of the industry, but those that are against it feel that this law, if it were to pass, would be a major backstep.
First thing we maybe all need to understand that the whole purpose of creating legalization or ending prohibition around cannabis is to end the criminalization of those people that are involved in it, rather than continuous to keep us, in the black market, cause a loss of revenue and so forth. I never liked that part, but the loss of the revenue, et cetera. It seems as though 56 is trying to put us right back there.
Right, so the fear here is that if you make it more expensive than how you would get it on the black market, that'll just lead to more people getting it illegally and then having the potential for it to not be legitimized by the state. So that is a main concern with it. Now, a couple of changes were proposed over the last few years. Governor DeWine did not sign on those changes. If this were to pass the Senate, it has to then go to the House and then the governor's desk as well. No telling if he would sign it or not. But if it does pass, that's a massive change to the marijuana industry that's already had major changes, and you can expect the increase in the taxes ultimately leading to less of an input, less money going into the industry and less money going to the state.
So it feels like just over the course of a year, the voters have expressed what they wanted, and now we see lawmakers completely trying to mess that up. And you gotta ask yourself, who else would that hurt other than Ohio as a state? Because we reference this many times on the channel. A lot of people, they'll just go out of state if their laws are too oppressive. And what we're seeing right now in Ohio and the result of a lot of these laws that they're aiming to repeal is that the prices of things will just get even higher. And flour in Ohio is already pretty expensive. It's already double the price of Michigan's, and things will only get even more expensive.
It's an issue News 5 has been covering for years. The fight to bring recreational marijuana to our state.
I've been waiting for this for 50 years, to buy it legally.
And 7 months into legal sales, the market continues to grow.
Great to see new customers coming in month over month into the regulated market here in Ohio.
Now, the amount of tax Ohio customers pay for recreational marijuana could soon be changing.
When we legalized marijuana, there were a whole group of societal problems that were created by that.
Recreational marijuana may get more expensive than it already is. State lawmakers want to vastly increase how much consumers pay when they purchase cannabis.
While some in Columbus believe these are necessary, business owners say it'll only hurt what they've built.
Dealing with Crohn's disease since he was a kid, Terrell Washington felt stuck until he was able to access marijuana.
And got me into remission with my Crohn's disease because of using cannabis.
He knew he wanted to help people like him, which is why he founded Leaf Relief Dispensary.
Business has been good, but as we've learned, never get too comfortable with cannabis in Ohio.
But he's worried that his business will suffer under Ohio lawmakers' latest attempt to regulate cannabis policy.
When we legalized marijuana, there were a whole group of societal problems that were created by that.
Since voters overwhelmingly legalized adult use in 2023, legislators like House Speaker Matt Huffman have been trying to change the law. Now, Republicans have introduced Senate Bill 56, which would decrease the THC content and limits home growing.
We're trying to move it into a little bit more reasonable, continue to have adult use, but a little bit more reasonable usage.
THC would be capped at 100 milligrams per package. Of the 61 edible products to buy on Leaf Relief's site, only 12 were under 100 milligrams. The bill would also raise the cost. Right now, there's a 10% tax at the point of sale. The GOP bill would bump that up to 15%, but Governor Mike DeWine is proposing increasing it to 20%.
This money could be spent, and it could be spent on things that we thought would really make a difference, and frankly wouldn't get done but for using that money.
So as you guys can see, despite the fact that certain Republicans in some states are advancing measures to legalize herb, there are Republicans in other states that are still against it. And this sort of goes back to what I said in my previous episode, where we're noticing a trend of a lot of the older conservative Republicans, the older generations, they are really hesitant to legalize the herb, whereas a lot of the younger Republican and the younger conservatives are definitely more open to legalization. Now, just a quick reminder, guys, if you're getting value from this video, please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support us further, cop some merch or buy us a cup of coffee. Now, you guys heard him say it for yourself. They're increasing the taxes from 5 to 10 to 15, even up to 20%. And in theory, that may sound good for them because it means a lot more tax revenue for the state. And we have seen instances where this tax revenue has been put to good use, like out in Arkansas, they're using it for students' lunches. But we've also seen instances where that tax revenue just sits in a bank account and no one knows what to do with it because no one can agree on what's a good use. So let's head over to Michigan and see what they're doing in Detroit, because I think that they're doing things in the right way, and a lot of states can actually model their laws on Michigan. And then we'll head to New Jersey, where there's over $6 million in tax revenue just sitting down in a bank account doing absolutely nothing.
New at 11, the state brought in nearly $300 million in cannabis tax revenue in 2023. Almost $90 million of that will go to cities across the state. And tonight we are learning what one of those cities plans to do with the money. CBS News Detroit's Kelly Vaughn has more on this. Kelly, that's a lot of money.
Oh yeah, there are hundreds of cannabis businesses across Michigan. I spent the day in Hazel Park, where there are multiple in just that one small town. Now, tax money is collected from all of those cannabis licenses, and it's now being distributed back into the community. More than $87 million will be going out to 269 municipalities in Michigan. They'll receive around $59,000 for each of the licensed cannabis retail stores and micro businesses that they have. And those numbers can add up, with some counties having 10, 20, even 30 licenses. In Hazel Park, the city has 10 licenses and is receiving more than $590,000.
It's been very beneficial to the city of Hazel Park and its taxpayers to receive these additional monies from adult use marijuana.
Hazel Park City Manager Ed Klobuchar says they'll use the funds to help cover the $1 million increase to the cost of their employee pension program.
And those revenues that we get from marijuana help us to meet that obligation.
He says with the marijuana money, they won't have to raise taxes or cut services to cover the cost.
It does benefit the city because that means, because of these additional revenues, these are services that we don't have to cut, or fees that we don't have to increase, or taxes that we don't have to increase to get that bill paid.
Each municipality can use their funds however they see fit. The money for Michigan's Marijuana Regulation Fund was collected from 737 cannabis licenses in the 2023 fiscal year. And there's more of that marijuana money to go around, because along with that $87 million in disbursements, the Marijuana Regulation Fund also sent more than $101 million to the school fund for K-12 education, and another $101 million to the Michigan Transportation Fund.
So I know it's going to cities all over the state. Can we assume the bigger the city, the more money they're probably getting?
Right. The more marijuana licenses you have, you get that $59,000 over and over and over. And of course, Detroit has 33 licenses, so they're going to be receiving nearly $2 million. And we're actually going to be hearing more about what the city plans to do with that when the mayor outlines his budget this week. So a lot of money to go around.
Maybe a follow-up later this week.
So there's a lot of money when it comes to this industry. There's a lot of tax revenue that can be generated. And some of the states, they're putting it to good use. Shout out to Michigan. And somewhere that can definitely follow their lead is out in New Jersey, because more than $6 million in tax revenue has been just sitting unused out in New Jersey. And according to this article, that's despite the fact that spending recommendations have been made to the legislature for over 3 years. The millions in revenue collected from what's called the Social Equity Exercise Fee has been accumulating since rec sales had began in 2022. As of August 2024, the balance in the fund was more than $6 million. So you guys can see, even when rec is passed, there's a lot of confusion as to what happens with those funds. There's a lot of competing interests and a lot of people who have different ideas as to what should happen with those funds. And that's one of the big problems when you're operating in the legal market under state control. Now, some of you guys who may have been operating in the free market may find this next story pretty interesting, as President Trump confirms he's appointing former drug prisoner he freed as a new pardon czar.
Alice Johnson, where's Alice? Boy, are you incredible. I watched you on last night on television. You were so good. You know, Alice was in prison for doing something that today probably wouldn't even be prosecuted. She spent 22 years in prison, 22 years. She had another 22 years left. Can you believe it? And I pardoned her, and it was one of the best pardons. One of the best pardons. And you've been an inspiration to people. And we're going to be listening to your recommendation on pardons. You're going to go over, and she's going to be my pardon czar, okay? And you're going to find people just like you that should not have happened. It should not have happened. So you're going to look and you're going to make recommendations, and I'll follow those recommendations, okay, for pardons, all right?
So, according to this article right here, President Trump on Thursday confirmed that he's appointing a person who's sentenced for a drug-related conviction he commuted to a new role as the nation's pardon czar, responsible for facilitating future clemency actions. Johnson herself received a presidential commutation from President Trump during his last term in 2018 while serving a life sentence related to trafficking charges. A pardon was later issued in 2020. Now you guys may be thinking, trafficking charges, that's crazy, oh, President Trump is issuing pardons. But let's not forget, presidential pardons have been issued by tons of presidents on both sides. And in this particular situation, what I find interesting is that it says Allison Johnson has been a relentless advocate for second chances, and her own story is a testament to the power of redemption. And a lot of you guys would know, in the past and even today, there are instances where people get locked up for small amounts of herb, or officers search your entire car because they're getting a whiff of something. And I definitely think that second chances are something that can help a lot of people to turn around their life. I've heard countless people drop comments on the channel and they said, yo, I was arrested back in the day and that went on my record, and that's absolutely crazy. So if those people back then were able to get a second chance, that could have changed their life completely. But let me know what you guys think about all that. I want to find out what you guys think about some of those issues. And recently, we've been noticing a lot of lawmakers have been saying yes when it comes to legalization. The people have spoken and the lawmakers are starting to listen. So check that video out because it's coming up right now.